I just wanted to give you a high level sneak peek of the pricing of Kinesis before proceeding further. And this is the price for on demand KDA streams. You can pause the video and look into it, or you can look at the PDF version, or you can go to the Kinesis pricing website given by AWS and then take a sneak peek into the pricing. And this is the pricing for provision. So you see the pricing dimensions for on demand and provisioned are different. So make sure you take a look at it before you start working on Kinesis. Okay, so now it's time to talk about how to write records. We have created the Kinesis data streams. Whatever configurations were needed, we have done all those configurations. Now it is time to write data to Kinesis data streams. Now, in a single KDS, there can be multiple producer applications which can write. Essentially, though, all those would be producer application. Now, when I say producer application, it can be IoT devices, it can be smart devices, database changes, or CDC tools like Debezium, Stream, etc. It can be real-time applications or anything that generates event data or that generates streaming data and then send it to Kinesis. These producer applications will send records or data to Kinesis using the AWS SDK. Now, there are various AWS SDKs available. We have SDKs for Java, Python, .NET, etc. I'll be showing you using Python because that is the only programming language that I know. But you can use the AWS SDK for Kinesis in a producer application to send records to a Kinesis data stream. Now, when we send data to KDS, we know that there would be one or more shards. If it is on demand, by default, there would be 4 shards. If it is provisioned, we would mention the number of shards. But in our case, we have an on demand KDS. So we'll have only 4 shards as of now, unless we send a lot of records, in which case KDS has to add more number of shards automatically. But let's consider we have 3 number of shards and the records would be landed in all the different shards based on the partition key. And each shard has a limit of 1 megabytes per second or 1000 records per second. That is the limitation of a single shard. If you have multiple shards, you can multiply the number of shards into 1 megabytes per second or 1000 records per second to find out the KDS stream capacity. So the entire KDS stream capacity would be equal to the number of shards into 1 Mbps or 1000 records per second. That is the write capacity of a KDS stream. For read capacity, it is a little different. So what are the APIs that are available which can be used to write records to a KDS stream from a producer application? I will talk about only Python SDK. So in Python, the first API that is available is put_record. And using this API, we can write one record to a KDS shard in a single API call. The KDS stream that we created, it has 4 shards. When you use put_record, we'll be able to send only one record in a single API call. The limitation that you see here of 1000 records per second, how these 1000 records would be calculated by KDS, this is nothing but the API call. So if you use put_record, a single API call can send only one record, and the size of the record can be anywhere from a few bytes to 1 MB also. So irrespective of the size of the record, when you use put_record API, it will be considered as a single API call and as a single record. So the remaining space would be wasted. That's what I meant to say. To overcome this, Kinesis has put_records API. Using this, we can write multiple records in a single API call. Now, when I say multiple records, the maximum limit is 500 records in a single API call. That is the maximum limit of a single put_records API call. Now consider the same scenario. Let's say size of the single record is only 100 bytes. Then you can send 100 into 500, which is 50 kilobytes of record in a single API call. And that would be considered a single record. Even though you are sending 500 records with 100 bytes each, but as you are making a single API call using put_records method, it would be considered as a single record, or it would be counted as a single record out of the 1000 records per second. So that's why you should always use put_records API to send records to Kinesis data stream. I think you have understood the difference between put_record and put_records and which API should be used. As a best practice, you should always use put records API. Let's look at some examples. Let's say each record size is 100 bytes. This is the first example, and we are trying to send a single record of 100 bytes to a KDS stream. Now, this record size is from the producer application. Kinesis does not have any idea about the record size. So if we use put record, we are limited by the number of records per second. We will not be able to send more than 1000 records per second. And if we use put record, then the total data that we would be sending is equal to 100 kilobytes per second, because 0.1 into 1000 is equal to 100 kilobytes per second. Even though you have not hit the limit of size, which is 1 megabytes per second for a single shard, but we have hit the limit of 1000 records per second. So if the size is very less, of course, put record is not the API that you would want to use. If you use put records, in this case, we can send 1 megabytes per second of writes to a single shard, in which case we can send 10,000 records per second. Now, 10,000 business records, but for Kinesis, it would be only 1000 records, because each API would send approximately 500 records. Right, so that's why put records would be much more beneficial if the size of the actual record is way less than 1 MB. Let's consider another example wherein the record size is 20 KB. If you use put record, we can send only 500 records, because 500 into 20 KB is equal to 1 megabytes per second. So we are hit by the limit of 1 megabytes per second of a single shard. Again, I'm talking about a single shard, not multiple shards. Using put records also in a single API, we cannot send more than 500 records. So in this case, even if we use put records, we would be hit by the throughput limit, which is 1 megabytes per second. So we cannot send more than 500 records. If the record size is 20 KB, then both put record and put records will be able to send same number of records to a single shard per second. Now, in case of put record, you see that the number of API call is only 1. So for Kinesis, it would be only 1 record per second, but we are actually sending 500 business records. We cannot use more than 1 API call, because we are hit by the limit of 1 megabytes per second. So in this case, both of them would achieve the same throughput, and the actual record that you can send using put underscore records would also be 500 per second. Let's consider another example where each record is 2 KB. Now in this case, we can send 500 records using put record, because we'll have to make 500 API calls, and we have 2 KB. So we are hit by the limit of 1 megabytes per second of a single shard. Now if you use put underscore records, it would be similar, because a single shard would be hit by the limit of 1 megabytes per second. In the previous example, it would be 50, not 500. My bad, let me change it. So 20 into 50 is equal to 1 megabytes per second. Now, for example 2 and example 3, we are hit by a single shard throughput limit of 1 megabytes per second. Now, if you use a record size of 0.5 KB and we use put record, then you cannot send more than 500 kilobytes per second of throughput in a single shard, because we are hit by the number of records per second limitation of a single shard. But if you use put records in this case, we'll be able to send 4 API calls till the time we are limited by the throughput constraint of a single shard, which is 1 megabytes per second. But in doing so, we'll be able to send 2000 business records per second. But for Kinesis, it would be only 4 records, because we are using 4 API calls. So by looking at these examples, what you can make out? You can see that if the record size are less than 1 KB, then put records will be way more beneficial than put record. But if the number of records are more than 1 KB, then put records and put record would be more or less similar, because we'll be hit by the throughput limitation of a single shard.